Boys and girls of the audience, what did that story mean? What was that about? What was that a story about?
The missing piece is still perfect.
The missing piece is still perfect. Judy, just one word, Judy. You're perfect the way you are. Yeah, anybody else?
Codependency.
Codependency. Back to holding on too tight. Larry.
We're never done with the adventure about life.
We're never done with the adventure of life. Thank you. One more, Jim.
We're whole just the way we are.
We're whole just the way we are. Elizabeth, I lied. One more. What's it?
That's what I was going to say. We're complete and whole in every single way.
Right. I love that saying. We're all perfect, and we could all use a little improvement. I was like, so it's a story about life, right? It's a story about relationships. It's a story about ourselves. And being in a church is a story about our relationship with God at some level too. And it's a story about how the missing piece isn't something we find outside of ourselves, but that our wholeness, if it is ever to exist, must be realized within ourselves, right? One of the great things I've gotten to do this year is watch April's son Gavin play Little League baseball. And it's been a long time since I've been on the Little League field, and so it's brought up a few things for me getting to watch Gavin's game. And the first thing that I noticed is that I fully embodied that phrase, back in my day. Back in my day, they used to do things this way, and they used to do things that way. And I've embodied that idea that back in my day, things were perfect, right? Back in my day. The second thing that I've learned is that there's something about engaging with something that you did as a child, especially, that reawakens certain energies, an awareness, a consciousness, a certain aspect of life. It's very exciting to almost return a part of yourself, to be reawakened in that energy, especially if anything to do with play, even down to the coaches and the parents yelling at the kids, and all the contradictions. Swing the bat, kid. What were you doing swinging that pitch for? That was way over your head. That ball gets hit, I want you to run. What did you do running when that ball was hit? Now you're out. So all those contradictions, watching the kids kind of melt down. And what I realized too is there's, to echo the words of the comedian Mitch Hedberg, who said, I wish I could play Little League now. I'd be so much better. So there's that aspect that's like, hey, coach, put me in. Maybe they need me here. The third thing that I came to realize is that looking back on Little League, that all I really remember are the errors I made and my big wins. I remember striking out and being the last person out to lose the game. I remember knowing I put a tag on somebody, but the umpire called them safe anyways. I remember getting the winning hit in the 9th inning to win the game. I remember diving and getting a foul ball to get the last out. But what I realize is that what I don't remember so much are the names of the kids that I played with. And what I don't remember so much is the faces of the coaches or some of the lessons that they taught me. And what I don't remember as much is how bright and sunny the days were. And what I don't remember so much is the fun that I had. And it got me to realize too that looking back on my everyday life, it's not that different. What I remember most are the errors and the big wins. The stupid things I said, the stupid things I did, the things I didn't do, and the victories, the accomplishments, the great things that I did. And so I realized that still, even after all these years, right, I had the realization that I'm still measuring my life based upon wins and losses, based upon balls and strikes. And what happens when we do that is there's a big missing piece there. There's a big missing hole in ourselves where our real life remains, where our wholeness is. To share another quote from Silverstein, he once said, "There are no happy endings. Endings are the saddest part. So just give me a happy middle and a very happy start. So it reminds us that life isn't about finishing the game and then seeing how many wins we had and how many losses. It's about playing the game itself, right? It's about being there. And it's about remembering that if we're looking for something to complete us, we're looking in the wrong place. We're looking in the wrong pieces. We have to recognize and realize that the awakening of wholeness is something that we have to find within ourselves, just like the missing piece did. To quote Ernest Holmes, he says, in the religious context, if a man is seeking God and if he happens to have the ability to think straight through, he will arrive at the inevitable conclusion that the discovery of God will have to come through the discovery of himself. The discovery of our lives, the truth of our lives, can only happen through ourselves. Now, looking back at my Little League years a little further, I do begin to see where the errors and the big wins work together. My biggest hit was in a tournament, and I got the only hit of the game. We lost by 100 runs, but I was so excited that I got that hit. It was a big hit, but I got thrown out running to second base and not thinking. I remember I threw a no-hitter, but what I'd forgotten is the only reason why I got to pitch that game in the first place against the Cubs, not the Chicago Cubs, but the Cubs of Bellflower, California, I think is where they were, was because I had gotten to come in relief and gave up 14 runs to that team in a time I had pitched before. Back in my day when there was no mercy rule, they just had no mercy on you and scored and scored and scored. And I can see how life works that way too. Certain relationships that thankfully failed in a certain way so that I have the relationships that I have now. Certain mistakes and failures in work that I've made that hopefully allow me to have the blessings and work that I have now. And there's something that happens when we get out of the black and the white, when we get out of the balls and the strikes, that we can begin to see a wholeness emerge in our lives if we're willing to listen, if we're willing to open ourselves up, to come to that realization that maybe life isn't missing anything, it's that I'm emphasizing the wrong things. All of a sudden I realize that my life isn't about trying to remember how many times I struck out and how many hits that I got. It's that I want to know those kids sitting next to me on the bench. It's not about how many awards I achieved or how many great things that I think that I did. It's about remembering the conversations, the beautiful days, the depth of being alive itself. It's not about how far I got with Amy Sutherland. It's about what we did and what we talked about. I got to round first base, and then I got picked off trying to get again to second. Yeah. Again, Ernest Holmes tells us that this process of reinterpreting what it means to live whole in our lives. He says this calls for an absolute unity between God and man. Not a unity someday to be attained, but one that exists now, that existed before he found it out, and would have existed just the same if he had never made the discovery. Thus, we realize that man is immortal now, whether he knows it or not. If this were not true, there is nothing he could do to achieve immortality. And the key phrase there for me is whether he knows it or not. My wholeness is whether I know it or not. Your wholeness is whether you know it or not. The truth is whether we're aware of it or not. And so doing that work, allowing the emphasis, allowing the story that perhaps we've told ourselves so strongly to subside for a moment, the truth of our lives can reveal itself to us. And all of a sudden I can say, Anthony, that was that kid's name. Crowded house, that's what we talked about on that date. Our life begins to reveal the wholeness that was always there to us now. To close from a quote from Silverstein as well, which I think contains the secret of life in it. He says, when the light turns green, you go. When the light turns red, you stop. But what do you do when the light turns blue with orange and lavender spots? Think about it. Thank you very much. Thanks for participating today. The kids will be back in a little bit. And we're going to welcome back Douglas Ladner with Bill.